Amid high inflation and job cuts, what's the wisest way to keep moving forward in the search? It's September 2025, and sometimes it feels like the news cycle is just a broken record playing the same unsettling tune. Every morning, as I scroll through headlines before the kids wake up, it's a fresh reminder. Inflation still stubbornly high, job cuts happening in sectors we once considered unshakable, and the cost of living just keeps climbing. You read about these big, impersonal economic trends, but then you see it in the eyes of friends, in their hushed conversations over coffee, and the reality hits home much harder. I know good people, genuinely talented folks with solid resumes and years of experience, who've been waiting for months for even a single callback from a job application. Not just any job, but roles they're perfectly suited for. It's a strange, disorienting time. If you've ever found yourself refreshing your inbox for the 10th time in an hour, that little knot of hope tightening with each refresh, only to see nothing but automated rejections, or worse, just silence, then you know the specific heavy weight of this season. It's not just a professional setback, it seeps into everything else. The early morning quiet used to be a time for planning, for a peaceful coffee, but now, for many, it's become a battlefield of anxiety, wondering if their career, their financial security, their entire sense of stability is slowly eroding. The pressure builds, not just from the bills piling up, but from an internal dialogue that questions your worth, your capabilities, and your place in the world. You start to second-guess decisions, to overanalyze every word in your cover letter, to wonder if you're just not good enough, even when you know, deep down, that you are. It's a frustrating loop, an endless cycle of effort met with indifference. It's in moments like these, when the world feels like it's conspiring against you, that the real question isn't just a bitter, exhausted sigh of why is it so hard? No, the deeper, more profound question, the one that truly matters for our sanity and our ability to keep moving, becomes, what can we do to endure this storm and keep moving forward, especially when the path ahead feels shrouded in fog and the ground beneath our feet seems to shift with every news update? How do we find that inner strength, that bedrock of resilience, when everything around us screams uncertainty? How do we stop feeling so isolated in this struggle, wondering if we're the only ones navigating these choppy waters? It's a question that cuts to the core of how we approach life's inevitable hardships, not just in job searching, but in any period of prolonged challenge. It makes you think about how we fortify ourselves, not against the world's whims, because those are largely out of our hands, but against our own internal responses to those whims. The easy thing to do is to retreat, to pull up the drawbridge, to hoard what little energy we have, and to face the unknown alone, thinking that solitude offers some kind of protection. But what if that instinct, while understandable, is actually leading us down a lonelier, less effective path? What if the answer isn't about hunkering down and going it solo, but about something else entirely? About connection, about shared purpose, about finding strength in unexpected places when your own well feels dry. Part 2. Introducing Phyl Terry's collaborative job search philosophy. That's precisely where a book like Never Search Alone enters the picture, offering a beacon of a different kind of wisdom. It's written by Phyl Terry, a name you might recognize if you've followed the world of leadership and business growth. Terry is an experienced CEO, an insightful advisor, and the founder of Collaborative Gain, a venture that, for years, has been all about helping leaders and professionals navigate complex challenges and career transitions. But what makes this particular book so potent, so polivant, so relevant for our current times is that it distills years of his real-world experience, not just as a consultant, but as someone who keenly observed the human element in professional life. Terry didn't just stumble upon this idea. He built the concept of what he calls job search councils, after witnessing firsthand just how isolating and, frankly, soul-crushing the hunt for a new role can be. He saw it even among senior executives, people you'd imagine to be supremely confident and well-connected. They, too, felt that deep loneliness, that sense of being adrift in a sea of applications and interviews, all by themselves. It struck him that this solitary struggle was not only inefficient, but also detrimental to their well-being, eroding their self-belief and prolonging the search. it became clear to him that the conventional wisdom of networking, or going it alone, was falling short for many. Reading his words, I felt a genuine sense of recognition, almost as if he was speaking directly to those of us in midlife, juggling the heavy demands of careers, the persistent hum of bills, and the daily beautiful chaos of family life. We're often stretched thin, trying to keep all the plates spinning, and the thought of adding a prolonged, uncertain job hunt to that mix is enough to make anyone feel overwhelmed. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from being the primary provider, or a significant one, and feeling that fundamental stability wobble. Terry's insights resonated deeply with that feeling of trying to keep hope alive, not just for ourselves, but for those who depend on us, while wrestling with a job market that feels increasingly opaque and unforgiving. He understands the quiet desperation, the almost shame-filled reluctance to admit how hard things truly are, even to close friends. We're expected to be strong, to be resilient, to have it all figured out. And when we don't, the internal pressure can be immense, leading to a silent suffering that rarely gets acknowledged. The message woven through Never Search Alone is deceptively simple, yet profoundly powerful. In an uncertain job market, the true strength of a job seeker lies not in hunkering down and going it alone, but in joining others. It's about forming a small, committed group to support each other, to share insights, to offer different perspectives, and most importantly, to collectively focus on what is genuinely within their control. This isn't just about networking in the traditional sense, which can often feel transactional and superficial. It's a much deeper, more intentional form of collaboration. It reframes the entire job hunt from what so many experience as a lonely, grueling grind, a solitary battle against algorithms and silence, into a collective practice. It becomes a shared journey, a community effort, where the burden is distributed and the victories, however small, are celebrated together. This idea, this emphasis on finding strength not in individual struggle, but in shared purpose and mutual aid, resonates deeply with the enduring wisdom of Stoicism, which often points us toward our duties to humanity and the power of focusing on our internal state, on what we can truly manage, rather than getting lost in the chaos of external events. It's about realizing that while the current economic winds might be out of our hands, how we sail our ship and who we choose to sail with is very much a choice we can make. It's about finding agency in connection. Part 3. The power of a job search council. Terry's central idea, the beating heart of Never Search Alone, is the concept of a job search council. Imagine, if you will, a small, dedicated team of fellow travelers, typically 4 to 6 peers, who commit to meeting regularly, perhaps weekly or bi-weekly. This isn't just a casual coffee catch-up. It's a structured, purposeful gathering designed to transform the isolating experience of job seeking into a collaborative effort. In a market where rejection is not just common, but often the default response, where the vast majority of applications disappear into the digital ether without a trace, this group becomes an indispensable psychological buffer against despair. It's a place where you can voice frustrations without judgment, dissect confusing interview feedback, and share the tiny glimmers of hope that keep you going. The unspoken weight of unemployment or career uncertainty can be immense, leading to self-doubt that erodes confidence and makes you question your capabilities. A council acts as a bulwark against this internal erosion, reminding you that your worth isn't tied to a recruiter's email or an HR algorithm, and that your struggle is shared, not singular. It's a structured environment where empathy is the first order of business, fostering a sense of solidarity that is often missing in the fiercely competitive individual job hunt. It creates a space for candid feedback on resumes, interview techniques, and networking strategies, all delivered with the genuine support of peers who truly understand the stakes. It strikes me how much this echoes the ancient wisdom of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflected on our inherent social nature. He wrote that human beings are made for cooperation, like the rows of teeth in a jaw, designed to work together, each performing its own function for the good of the whole. He believed that our rationality, our capacity for reason, also compels us to work with others, to form communities, because that is where our true potential, and indeed our peace, can be found. The job hunt, in its modern incarnation, often feels like the antithesis of this. A lone wolf battling against a pack of unseen competitors, isolated and vulnerable. But Terry's counsel concept brings us back to this fundamental human truth. We are not meant to struggle in isolation. Our resilience isn't just a solo endeavor. It's often forged in the shared experience of challenge, supported by those who understand because they're walking a similar path. It's a powerful antidote to the feeling that you're uniquely failing. I can recall a period a few years ago when I was feeling particularly adrift in my own career. It wasn't a job search, exactly, but a deep uncertainty about the direction my work was heading. A feeling of professional stagnation that was quietly unsettling my evenings and weekends. I felt like I was supposed to have all the answers, to be charting a clear course for myself and my family. But internally, I was lost, grappling with an undefined unease. I remember a conversation with a colleague, someone I respected but didn't know particularly well outside of work. We were both at a conference, a bit removed from our usual environments, and somehow the masks came off. We started talking about our anxieties, our fears about the future of our industry, and the quiet despair of feeling like we were just treading water, unsure of our next move. In that single, unvarnished conversation, where we both admitted to feeling equally lost, equally vulnerable, I found a surprising wellspring of strength. It wasn't advice he gave me, or a solution, or a magic bullet for my career woes, but the simple, profound act of shared understanding. Just knowing that someone else, a capable and intelligent peer, felt the same way, expressed the same doubts, made my own burden feel immeasurably lighter. It was a fleeting, informal version of what Terry describes, but it powerfully reminded me of something crucial. Endurance doesn't just grow in solitude. It flourishes when we commit to carrying the weight together, even if it's just through shared vulnerability and mutual acknowledgement. It's in those moments of connection that the heavy, suffocating blanket of isolation begins to lift, allowing a little light and a little hope back in. The counsel, then, isn't just a practical tool for job searching. It's a vital psychological anchor, a testament to our fundamental need for human connection, especially when navigating turbulent waters and the daunting unknowns of our professional lives. Part 4. Defining your non-negotiables in a tough job market. Beyond the strength of community, beyond the vital psychological buffer a job search counsel provides, Never Search Alone pushes us to a crucial, often overlooked step that feels almost counterintuitive in a desperate market: defining our actual needs and boundaries. In a world where the prevailing wisdom seems to be spray and pray, scattering applications everywhere and hoping something sticks, casting a wide net to maximize chances, the book urges us to pause. It asks us to take a deep breath and define our must-haves and must-nots. This isn't about being overly picky or entitled, which might be a fear many carry when jobs are scarce. It's about strategic self-preservation, about discerning what truly serves your long-term well-being versus what offers only fleeting, potentially damaging relief. In today's unforgiving economy, where the specter of high inflation and job scarcity can make any offer, any flicker of interest, seem like a glorious lifeline, this discipline feels almost radical. The desperation can be palpable, a heavy cloak that tempts us to accept anything, to compromise on things we swore we never would, just to get a foot in the door, to keep the bills paid, to restore a semblance of normalcy and stability for ourselves and our families. But Terry argues, convincingly, that this clarity, this proactive drawing of lines in the sand, is not just helpful, but essential. It's about ensuring that the next step isn't just a step, but a truly wise step, one that moves you forward without slowly eroding your soul or compromising the very things that give your life meaning. It's a proactive measure against future regret, a way to ensure that the relief of landing a job doesn't quickly give way to the quiet dread of being in the wrong one. This immediate, almost visceral need to clarify what we truly value echoes the Stoic insistence on intentionality and the avoidance of trivial pursuits, or worse, commitments that actively detract from our well-being. Seneca, for instance, often warned against the dangers of a life lived without direction, a life scattered across countless fleeting desires and external pressures. He observed that much of life is wasted not on grand failures, but on an accumulation of small, inconsequential activities and compromises that ultimately leave us feeling empty, unfulfilled, and resentful. By diligently naming what we absolutely refuse to sacrifice, whether it's the non-negotiable need for remote flexibility to better manage family life and childcare, or a healthier, more ethical company culture that aligns with your personal integrity, or even simply a commute that doesn't consume 2 precious hours of our day, we are actively protecting ourselves. We are safeguarding our well-being, our peace of mind, and our precious finite time from falling into roles that, while offering immediate financial relief, might slowly but surely drain us of our energy, our joy, and our sense of purpose. It's a powerful act of self-respect in a market that often feels designed to make you question your worth and accept less than you deserve. It's about building a foundation for sustainable professional happiness rather than just a temporary solution. I can speak to this from personal experience, a story that still smarts a little. There was a time in my career when I accepted a job that on paper looked incredibly promising. The title was good, the pay was certainly decent, and the company itself was reputable, a name many would recognize. But it came with one significant caveat: constant, extensive travel, often requiring me to be away from home for several days each week. At the time, my son was just a toddler, and my wife and I were still navigating the intense, sleep-deprived, and utterly demanding early years of parenthood. I remember telling myself I could manage it. I rationalized it, convincing myself that the career boost, the experience, and the financial security were worth the sacrifice, that I would make up for the lost time when I was home, that I'd be an even better, more present father because of this temporary hardship. But the reality was brutal. The late-night calls from different time zones, the endless cycle of airports and anonymous hotel rooms, the crushing guilt of missing bedtime stories, first words, and even important doctor's appointments. It all mounted up. It didn't just make me physically tired. It actively corroded my sense of balance, my connection to my family, and ultimately, my overall happiness. It nearly broke me, both professionally, as my focus wavered, and personally, as I felt increasingly disconnected from the life I was supposedly working so hard to build. If I had paused then, if I had truly defined my must-nots, if I had understood that being consistently present for my family, especially during those formative years, was a non-negotiable value, I would have walked away from that offer, regardless of its perceived prestige. That clarity, that simple yet profound act of self-knowledge and boundary setting, would have spared me months of profound struggle and regret. Terry's advice isn't just about finding a job. It's about finding the right job, one that aligns with your core values and allows you to live a life of integrity, even in the midst of financial pressure and an uncertain market. It's a reminder that true strength isn't just about enduring hardship, but about intelligently avoiding unnecessary ones through thoughtful self-awareness and proactive decision-making. It's about being deliberate in your pursuit of what truly matters, ensuring your journey is one of intention, not just reaction. Part 5. Negotiating your worth in an uncertain job market. Once you've done the crucial work of defining your must-haves and must-nots, really getting clear on what you need from a role to thrive, not just survive, and protecting yourself from past mistakes, the next insight from Never Search Alone becomes paramount: the act of negotiation. It's a natural, almost instinctive reaction, especially when you've been searching for a while and an offer finally lands, to just breathe a profound sigh of relief and accept it immediately. There's a powerful, almost primal fear that if you push too hard, if you seem ungrateful or demanding, the offer might just vanish, leaving you back in the uncertainty you've been fighting to escape. This fear is amplified in a challenging economic climate. But the book reminds us that negotiation isn't a gamble, or an act of greed, or a risky maneuver. It's a fundamental part of the process, a right, not a risk. Companies expect it. They often bake it into their initial offer, setting a baseline from which they anticipate candidates will try to improve upon it. And particularly now, in an economic climate where offers are often conservative, an initial bid to test the waters, a thoughtful, well-researched negotiation isn't just good practice. It's absolutely essential for ensuring you're fairly compensated. And crucially, that the role truly aligns with your carefully defined criteria and long-term goals. It's about being an active participant in shaping your future, rather than a passive recipient of circumstances. This is precisely where the ancient wisdom of Epictetus truly shines through, offering a powerful, timeless framework for approaching such a nerve-wracking moment. Epictetus, the former slave who became a profound Stoic teacher, famously articulated the idea that some things are within our control while others are not. The outcome of a negotiation, whether the company agrees to your terms, or how much they're willing to budge, or if they decide to pull the offer entirely, that's largely external, a response from another entity, and thus ultimately not entirely within your control. You can't force their hand, and you can't predict their exact limits. But what is absolutely, unequivocally within your control? Your preparation, your clarity about your worth and your needs gleaned from that earlier self-reflection, your courage to ask, to articulate your value calmly and respectfully, your confidence in presenting your case. These internal actions, these choices to show up prepared, informed, and to speak your truth are entirely yours to command. This perspective shifts the focus from the anxious anticipation of an external result, which can be paralyzing, to the empowering, grounded execution of your internal duties and efforts. You can't control the wind, but you can always adjust your sails, and Epictetus would remind us to focus precisely on that adjustment. I have a good friend, let's call him Mark, who recently found himself in this very position. After a particularly grueling few months of searching, filled with those familiar silent rejections, disheartening interviews that went nowhere, and the mounting pressure of providing for his young family, he finally received an offer for a senior role in a growing tech company. His initial reaction, as you might imagine, was pure, unadulterated relief, a powerful urge to just say yes immediately and put an end to the agonizing uncertainty. But having been part of an informal council we'd cobbled together, a small group of us sharing notes and support, he remembered the importance of not just accepting the first thing that came along, especially after having dedicated time to defining his own must-haves. He took a breath, he allowed himself a moment to celebrate, but then he recentered. He consulted with our group, sharing the offer details and his aspirations, his non-negotiables. We helped him rehearse his counteroffer, focusing not just on a higher salary, though he did get a modest bump there, which was certainly welcome, but on specific, long-term investments in his career development. What he really pushed for and secured were dedicated training credits for an upcoming industry certification that was critical for his professional growth, and a clear, written commitment to a flexible, hybrid work schedule that would allow him to be more present for his young family during crucial times. In the end, those training credits and the flexibility, which represented an investment in his future and his well-being, mattered even more to him than the initial cash increase. It was a win not just for his wallet, but for his long-term career resilience and his family life. Mark's experience profoundly illustrated that in hard times, when the job market feels stacked against you, negotiation is less about simply demanding more money and more about preserving your dignity, asserting your value, and securing the conditions that allow you to live a more integrated, meaningful life. It's about demonstrating that you understand your worth and that you are an active, discerning participant in your career journey, not just a passive recipient of circumstances. It's a quiet but powerful act of self-advocacy, a refusal to be entirely defined by external market conditions, choosing instead to focus on what you can influence to shape a path that aligns with your deeper values. It reminds us that even when the world feels uncertain and chaotic, we still have agency, and using that agency thoughtfully and courageously is a profoundly stoic and empowering act. Part 6, Reframing Rejection. Data, not doom. Let's pause for a moment on something we've touched on implicitly, but needs a more direct spotlight. The sheer emotional toll of rejection. It's an unavoidable, almost guaranteed part of any job search, especially in a tight, competitive market like the one many are navigating today. You spend hours, sometimes days, meticulously crafting an application, tailoring your resume, writing a thoughtful cover letter that tries to capture your essence and potential. You dedicate significant mental energy to preparing for interviews, rehearsing answers, envisioning yourself in the role, maybe even mentally decorating the new office or planning your first few months. Then comes the waiting, that agonizing silence, punctuated only by the ping of an email, often leading to a polite but firm no, or worse, just an automated, impersonal rejection that leaves you feeling like a number. The sting is real. The disappointment can be crushing. It's incredibly easy, almost natural, to let that feeling fester, to let it convince you that you're not good enough, that the universe is against you, that there's no point in trying again because the outcome will always be the same. This can lead to a spiral of self-doubt that eats away at your confidence, making each subsequent application feel like an even heavier lift. This is precisely where Marcus Aurelius offers a profound mental shift, a way to reclaim our power over our internal world. He once wrote something that has always stuck with me, especially when facing setbacks, both personal and professional. Do not suppose you are hurt and your complaint ceases. Cease your complaint and you are not hurt. It's a powerful, almost confrontational idea, suggesting that much of our suffering isn't from the external event itself, but from our interpretation of it, from the meaning we assign to it. Rejection, in its rawest, most objective form, is simply a fact. A company decided not to move forward with your application for this particular role. But the hurt, the gnawing self-doubt, the spiral into despair, the feeling of personal failure, the conviction that you are somehow inadequate or fundamentally flawed, that often comes from the story we immediately begin to tell ourselves about what that rejection means. It means I'm inadequate for any job. It means I'll never find anything. It means I'm a disappointment to myself and my family. It means I'm not valued. Stoicism, at its heart, invites us to examine these automatic stories, these ingrained reactions, these often unhelpful narratives we construct in the wake of adversity. It asks us to see rejection not as some final, damning judgment or an insurmountable wall, but simply as data. It's information. It's an outcome. Perhaps your specific skills or experience weren't the exact fit for that particular role's nuanced requirements. Perhaps the company culture wasn't truly aligned with your values, despite how it appeared from the outside. Perhaps they had an internal candidate who was a perfect match. Or perhaps they simply changed their hiring strategy mid-process due to budget shifts. There are a myriad of external factors, completely outside of your control and entirely unrelated to your inherent worth, that can lead to a no. The Stoic approach is to gather that data, to sift through it to see if there's something actionable to learn. Maybe your resume needs a tweak to better highlight certain skills, or your interview answers could be sharper in showcasing your impact. Or perhaps you need to refine your target companies based on your clarified must-haves and must-nots. And then, crucially, to let go of the emotional baggage, the self-blame, the personal injury. It's about taking the lesson, not the wound. It's about seeing it as an opportunity for refinement, for redirecting your energy more effectively towards more aligned opportunities, rather than something to collapse under, something that diminishes your inherent worth or defines your entire future. The goal isn't to pretend the initial sting isn't there, because it often is, but to prevent it from becoming a debilitating infection of self-doubt and paralysis. It's a reminder that our internal landscape, our perceptions and judgments about events, holds far more power over our well-being and our ability to persist than any external event ever could. When we stop complaining about the hurt and simply observe the data, we regain our composure, our agency, and our capacity to strategize for the next step, rather than being consumed by past setbacks. It is this rational, reflective approach that allows us to turn what could be a source of profound demoralization into a fuel for purposeful adaptation and continued effort. Part 7. Actionable steps for navigating career uncertainty. So with all these reflections on community, clarity, and the courageous act of negotiation, what does this actually look like in the gritty, often exhausting reality of daily life when you're navigating a job search amidst a volatile economy? It's rarely about grand, sudden gestures or instant, miraculous solutions. It's almost always about the accumulation of small, deliberate actions, consistently taken, even when you don't feel like it. These aren't monumental leaps, but incremental steps that over time build significant momentum and resilience. Let's consider what that might entail. Maybe this very week, it's taking that first, slightly uncomfortable and often vulnerable step of reaching out to 2 or 3 colleagues, or even professional acquaintances you respect and trust, to simply gauge their interest in forming a small, informal support group. It doesn't have to be a full-blown, formally structured council right off the bat, as Phyl describes. It can begin with a simple, genuine inquiry. You might say something like, "Hey, I've been thinking a lot about how challenging the job market is right now, and I wondered if you'd be open to a weekly or bi-weekly chat, just a quick call or coffee, to share insights, vent frustrations, and just keep each other motivated through this difficult period." That initial, vulnerable ask can be surprisingly powerful, laying the groundwork for the vital community that Never Search Alone champions. It's a quiet rebellion against the default setting of solitary struggle, a recognition that, as Marcus Aurelius understood, we are made for cooperation. This group provides not just practical tips or job leads, but that crucial emotional buffer, that shared sense of understanding that alleviates the crushing loneliness of the search. Or perhaps it's a more internal, reflective step that you can tackle independently. Before you even consider hitting apply on another job posting that vaguely matches your skills, take 20 minutes, grab a pen and paper. The physical act of writing can be incredibly clarifying. And physically write down your non-negotiable must-haves and your absolute must-nots for your next role. Don't just think them, commit them to paper, making them tangible. What are the 3 things you absolutely cannot live without in terms of work-life balance, company culture, or the kind of impact you want to make? What are the deal breakers, the specific conditions or environments that drained you in previous roles and that you absolutely refuse to revisit, no matter how desperate you feel? This isn't about limiting your options in a tough market. Quite the opposite. It's about refining your focus, about having a clear internal compass, ensuring that every application you send, every interview you commit to, is for a role that genuinely aligns with your deepest values and needs. This exercise, this intentional act of self-definition, becomes a powerful filter that guides you through the overwhelming noise and temptation of the job board, helping you avoid another costly mistake like the one I made with too much travel. It's a way of saying, my time and energy are finite, and I will invest them wisely and purposefully, in alignment with the life I truly want to live. This echoes Seneca's wisdom about avoiding trivial pursuits, focusing your precious life force on what truly matters, rather than scattering it on opportunities that will ultimately leave you unfulfilled. And then when an offer does eventually come, because it will if you maintain persistent, intentional effort, that next practical step might be practicing your negotiation script. Do it out loud, perhaps even in front of a mirror, or better yet, with your spouse, a trusted friend, or ideally, a member of your burgeoning job search group. It's okay if your voice feels a little shaky at first. That's part of the process. What's your opening line? What specific, value-based reasons can you articulate for your requests beyond just a higher number? What are the alternatives you've considered? And what's your confident yet polite response to potential pushback? This isn't about being aggressive or demanding. It's about being prepared, confident, and clear in asserting your worth and your non-negotiables. It's about remembering that, as Epictetus so wisely reminded us, while the outcome of the negotiation is beyond our full control, the company's budget, their policies, their ultimate decision, the preparation and the courageous act of asking are entirely within our power. The more you practice, the more natural and grounded it feels, and the more likely you are to approach that conversation with a calm, reasonable demeanor, ready to advocate for yourself and your future, ensuring the role serves you as much as you serve it. These aren't glamorous actions. They won't magically erase the persistent economic pressures of unemployment or the gnawing anxiety of inflation overnight. The larger forces at play in the market remain formidable and largely outside of our individual control, and no book or podcast can change that reality. But what these concrete, actionable steps do profoundly and meaningfully is anchor us firmly in what we can control. They shift our focus from the swirling, overwhelming chaos of external circumstances to the steady, empowering ground of our own intentions, our own efforts, and our own connections. And that anchor, that sense of agency and shared purpose, makes the storm, however fierce, feel undeniably more bearable. It allows us to navigate not just with a fragile hope, but with a quiet, resilient strength that comes from deliberate, thoughtful action, one small step at a time. This is how we find our footing in uncertain times. Part 8, a companion reading list for career navigation. As we begin to wrap up our dive into Never Search Alone, it's worth noting that no single book, however insightful or well-crafted, can ever be the complete answer to something as complex and emotionally charged as a career transition, especially when navigated through challenging economic currents. Life and work are simply too multifaceted for a one-size-fits-all solution. But what Phyl work does, so effectively and powerfully, is provide a vital psychological and tactical framework, particularly emphasizing the profound power of community. It gives us that essential why we absolutely shouldn't face this alone, and a solid how for building that collective strength, that shared resilience that often makes all the difference. It sets a foundational tone for approaching the job hunt not as a solitary battle, but as a collaborative journey. However, the world of career development and job searching is rich with other valuable insights, and when thoughtfully woven together with Terry's core ideas, they create an even more robust, comprehensive toolkit. These additional resources can complement Never Search Alone by providing deeper tactical guidance, alternative methods for self-discovery, or broader perspectives on career longevity. If Never Search Alone offers that crucial community frame, providing the essential support system and the mindset for collective resilience, then a book like The 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton adds the razor-sharp tactical steps necessary for efficiency. Dalton's approach, honed at Duke's Fuqua School of Business, is all about optimizing your time and efforts, leveraging data, and strategically networking in a structured, time-boxed way to cut through the noise and achieve measurable results. It's a brilliant complement to Terry's work, taking the foundational idea of strategic effort and giving you a granular, almost scientific roadmap for execution. Dalton essentially says, stop aimlessly applying, start being surgical. This systematic, disciplined approach to what is within our control, our efforts, our research, our outreach, is something the Stoics would deeply appreciate in its methodical precision and focus on effective action over chaotic activity. It's about making every minute count, reducing wasted energy, and approaching the search with a clear, rational strategy rather than emotional reactivity. Then there's Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, which brings a whole different, incredibly refreshing lens to the equation. Coming from the world of design thinking at Stanford, their book encourages us to view our lives, including our careers, not as fixed paths to be meticulously planned from start to finish, but as something we can prototype and experiment our way into, much like a designer develops a new product. This perspective is incredibly liberating, especially when clarity feels elusive, when you're unsure of your next professional step, or even what your ideal career might truly look like. It encourages small, low-risk experiments, what they call Odyssey plans, or mini-life prototypes, to test out different directions, explore new interests, and discover what genuinely resonates with you, all without the immense pressure of making a huge, irreversible decision. It's a wonderful antidote to the paralysis of perfectionism, urging us to iterate, learn from our experiences, and adapt our course, much like an inventor working on a new product, always testing, always refining. This experimental mindset perfectly aligns with the Stoic idea of acceptance and adaptability, understanding that life rarely unfolds exactly as planned, and our wisdom lies in how we respond and adjust to new information, rather than rigidly adhering to outdated plans or getting attached to specific, unchangeable outcomes. It's about finding joy and growth in the process of discovery itself. And finally, we can't talk about career searching, particularly in the context of self-discovery and aligning with purpose, without mentioning a perennial classic that still holds so much profound wisdom. What Color is Your Parachute? By Richard Bolles. This book, in its many updated editions over the decades, has been guiding generations of job seekers, and its enduring message is about grounding our choices in a deep, introspective understanding of our unique skills, our core values, and our true passions. It's a powerful reminder to build from the inside out, to not just chase titles or salaries or what others deem successful, but to fundamentally understand what truly energizes us, what kind of problems we want to solve, and what kind of impact we genuinely want to make in the world. It asks us to look inward, to engage in rigorous self-reflection, much like a Stoic examining their inner self, to ensure that our external pursuits are authentically aligned with our internal compass, preventing us from drifting into roles that promise much but deliver little personal satisfaction. Together, these books, Never Search Alone, which provides the vital human connection and shared purpose, The 2-Hour Job Search for its crisp tactical execution, Designing Your Life for its liberating approach to career exploration and experimentation, and What Color is Your Parachute for its deep dive into self-awareness and value alignment, form a truly powerful, multifaceted compass. They offer not just strategies for navigating this tough job market season, but also deeper, more enduring insights for the larger, ongoing journey of career and life design. They equip us with community, practical tactics, an experimental mindset, and a grounded understanding of self, helping us to move forward with a blend of resilience, intentionality, and a quiet confidence that comes from knowing ourselves and having a plan, even if that plan is simply to adapt. Part 9. The Margin. Note: community, clarity, and courage. After reflecting on all of this, on the insights gleaned from Never Search Alone, and how they echo through the centuries with Stoic wisdom, if I were to pull one single simple thought from the margins of my own notebook, something portable and memorable to carry forward, it would be this: in a hard economy, don't search alone. Search together, with clarity and courage. It sounds almost too straightforward, perhaps even simplistic, for the sheer complexity and emotional weight of what many of us are facing in the current job market. Yet, in its very brevity, it captures a profound truth, a fundamental shift in how we approach one of life's most isolating and stressful challenges. The hard economy isn't just a distant headline or an abstract concept. It's a very real, tangible pressure felt in our homes, on our kitchen tables, impacting our families, and gnawing at our sense of self-worth. It's the late-night calculations of how long the savings will truly last, the quiet dread that accompanies another utility bill, the almost unbearable weight of expectation from those who depend on you, all while facing an uncertain future. To face that alone, day after day, endlessly refreshing inboxes that remain stubbornly empty or deliver only impersonal rejections, is to invite a particular kind of psychological attrition. It grinds you down. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about your capabilities and your value. And as Marcus Aurelius pointed out, we are fundamentally social beings, inherently built for cooperation. We falter when we try to operate in a vacuum, convinced that individual struggle is the only path to strength. That instinct to retreat, to shoulder the burden silently, is understandable, a form of self-protection, but it often leads to deeper isolation and despair. So, the first part, don't search alone, isn't just a recommendation. It's an urgent, compassionate call to action for our mental and emotional well-being. It's about understanding that your strength isn't diminished by seeking help or leaning on others, but amplified by it. It's about actively building those small councils, those informal networks, even if they start as just 2 or 3 trusted peers, where vulnerability is allowed and shared experience becomes a powerful bedrock of resilience. Remember that conversation I had with a colleague when I felt utterly lost? That wasn't a formal counsel, but it created an instant, profound connection, a shared recognition that made my personal anxieties feel less overwhelming. It's a testament to the sheer power of simply knowing you're not the only one navigating the choppy waters. These groups offer more than just job leads or resume critiques. They offer perspective, accountability, a much-needed sounding board for your frustrations, and a shared celebration for those small, hard-won victories that are essential for keeping hope alive. They are a buffer against the relentless negativity, a communal shield against the sharp arrows of rejection. Then, with clarity. This speaks directly to the wisdom Seneca shared about avoiding trivial pursuits, about not wasting our precious life force on things that don't truly serve us or align with our deeper purpose. In a tough market, the temptation to just take anything, any port in a storm, is immense. The financial pressure can be so acute that it clouds our judgment, making us compromise on values or fundamental needs that in the long run will lead to deeper unhappiness and professional malaise. Clarity, the deliberate, intentional act of defining your must-haves and must-nots before you even begin to seriously engage with opportunities, is an act of profound self-respect and strategic foresight. It's a conscious decision to anchor your search in your authentic needs and values, not just reactively responding to market demands. It's what could have saved me from those months of draining travel and guilt when my son was small, the quiet erosion of my personal life for a career path that ultimately wasn't sustainable. It's about asking yourself, fundamentally, what kind of life am I truly trying to build? And does this potential role, with all its benefits and drawbacks, genuinely align with it? This isn't about being overly picky or privileged. It's about being strategic and intentional with your limited energy and time, ensuring your next step is a wise one, a move towards flourishing, not just merely surviving. And finally, courage. This is where Epictetus's profound dichotomy of control becomes our guiding star. Courage isn't the absence of fear, because fear is a very natural human response to uncertainty. It's acting despite that fear, with intentionality and purpose. It's the courage to put yourself out there again after another disheartening rejection, choosing to see it as data for learning and redirection, not a personal indictment of your worth. It's the courage to be vulnerable with your counsel, admitting when you're struggling, when the weight feels too heavy. But crucially, it's also the courage to negotiate, to advocate for your worth when an offer does come, even when the market feels incredibly precarious and you're desperate for stability. My friend Mark's story about negotiating for those crucial training credits and essential flexibility, not just a bump in salary, vividly showed that courage isn't just about making demands, but about clearly articulating your value, your long-term needs, and actively shaping an offer that truly serves you, rather than passively accepting what's merely given. The outcome of a negotiation isn't guaranteed, because so much of it depends on external factors beyond our control, but the act of courageous preparation, clear communication, and confident self-advocacy is entirely within your control. And in a world that often feels overwhelmingly out of control, that internal agency, that conscious decision to act with virtue, is everything. So, yes, it's a hard economy. There's no denying the challenges. But you don't have to face it alone, without direction, or without asserting your inherent value. Instead, lean into the profound power of shared effort, guided by clear intention, and fueled by the quiet strength of your own resolve. That, I think, is the wisest, most stoic way to keep moving forward, finding not just a job, but a path of purpose and dignity. Part 10. Transitioning to the role of institutions in our lives. It's good to know that even when the economic tides are rough, when the job market feels like a vast, indifferent ocean, we have these anchors, these actionable strategies from books like Never Search Alone that remind us of our inherent agency, our profound capacity for community, and the quiet power of focused intention. It's a comforting thought, a quiet strength that we can carry into our week, helping to steady us when the winds pick up. We've explored how much we can indeed influence by looking inward, by actively reaching out to peers, and by making deliberate, thoughtful choices about our paths and our boundaries. It's about cultivating that inner resilience, that stoic resolve, that calm center, even when the world around us feels unpredictable and chaotic. We can, after all, adjust our sails, reinforce our ship, and wisely choose our crew. And that makes a world of difference in navigating personal storms, transforming what could be a lonely ordeal into a shared journey of growth. But as much as our individual efforts, our personal values, and our immediate communities shape our day-to-day experiences, our lives, our work, and even our pursuit of meaning are also profoundly influenced by forces much larger than ourselves. We operate, whether we consciously acknowledge it or not, within vast, intricate, and often invisible, complex systems, economic structures that dictate prices and wages, deep-seated cultural norms that influence our aspirations, and perhaps most pervasive, the sprawling institutions of government that set the very rules of the game. We often take these larger structures for granted, seeing them as background noise, or perhaps as distant, abstract, and untouchable entities that don't directly impact our individual lives. Yet, they are constantly at play, subtly and not so subtly, molding the landscape in which we make our personal decisions, pursue our careers, raise our families, and strive for well-being. The very job market we just discussed, the inflation we feel so keenly in our grocery bills, the educational opportunities available to our children, the healthcare systems we rely on, even the digital infrastructure that connects us all. Every single aspect of modern life is, to varying degrees, shaped, enabled, or constrained by these larger institutional hands. They are the scaffolding within which our personal dramas unfold, and understanding them can provide a crucial layer of context to our individual struggles and triumphs. So as we bring our thoughts on the job search and personal agency to a close for now, I've found myself naturally turning my attention towards a deeper, broader exploration of these systemic influences. Having spent so much time on what we can do, it feels right to next consider the framework within which we do it. Next time, we're going to step back a bit from the intensely personal and practical, and instead, we'll turn to a book that grapples directly with these very questions of collective impact and societal design. We'll delve into Who is Government? A book that challenges us to look beyond the headlines and the often simplistic partisan debates, asking a far more fundamental question. What role do these institutions, this government, really play in shaping our work, our choices, and the very fabric of the society we depend on for our stability and flourishing? It's a book that invites us to consider the intricate, often overlooked dance between individual agency and systemic influence, between our personal aspirations and the larger framework that either supports or constrains them. It's a valuable perspective, I think, for those of us juggling the daily grind of deadlines and family life, trying to build a good, meaningful existence, and occasionally wondering about the bigger picture, about the powerful, often unseen forces that seem to move beneath the surface of our everyday awareness. What does it actually mean for us, personally and collectively, when these vast, complex structures shift and evolve? What responsibilities do we have to them? And what responsibilities do they have to us? That's what we'll be exploring next, seeking a Stoic-informed understanding of our place within the larger human community. So, as we step into that bigger conversation about institutions, I'd love for you to stay connected. If today's reflections on Never Search Alone and Stoicism resonated with you, consider sharing this episode with someone you know who's navigating the same rough waters. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of our journey, where we'll open Who is Government and ask how these vast systems shape our daily lives. And of course, if you'd like to dive deeper, you can support the author and support this channel by picking up a copy of Never Search Alone. It's a book that truly rewards a thoughtful read, especially in times like these. Until next time, may you carry with you the quiet strength of Stoic resolve, the comfort of community, and the courage to face both the personal storms and the larger tides that shape our shared world.